want to move away from co-sleeping and you want your baby to sleep in their bed or their own cot, first of all, we need to make sure that when you are teaching them to go to sleep in their own bed, that they are actually tired in the first place. Our sleep programs will go through the ideal time to actually pop them into their bed so that you can help, so they start to learn to be able to go to sleep in their own bed. But if you've been previously trying to pop them into their bed and they're just crying, the reason that they are crying rather than going to sleep is because they genuinely don't know what their bed is for. They've slept with you, they've slept in the stroller, they've slept in the car. They know that that is where they go to sleep, and if you've just suddenly popped them into their bed and trying to get them to go to sleep in there, they don't know why you've done that. It's sort of like just popping them on a chair and expecting them to go to sleep. So it's going to take a little while for them to learn what their cot is actually for. And if you are moving away from co-sleeping, it is easiest to learn how to go to sleep in their cot or their bed during the day first, so that then it comes to nighttime and that they will know when they rouse in between sleep cycles that their cot is a nice safe place, that it is where they go to sleep, and that they do sleep longer and more restoratively at night time for you. So our sleep programs go through a very gradual method of how to move away from co-sleeping, and it's certainly quite hands-on, so that it is a gradual process. It's not going to happen overnight, and it is going to take a while for your baby to learn the skill and the knowledge of what the actual bed is for, and it's going to take a while, but it certainly will get a lot better.
There is actually a sleep regression that happens around 8 months, and it's more to do with a lot of the physical development that your baby's going through at that stage. So at around sort of 8 to 10 months, your baby will most likely start crawling. They're probably really good at sitting. There's a big language burst. They might be pulling to stand. There's a whole lot of sort of cognitive stuff that's going on in their brain, and this does have an impact on their sleep. What can also happen is by around 8 months, babies really need to have transitioned down to 2 naps a day. So if your baby is still having 3 naps a day or is having that late afternoon sleep, it can mean that they are genuinely not tired enough to then have a decent sleep overnight. So that would look like a baby resisting settling at bedtime. It would look like a baby waking quite a lot overnight or waking early in the morning. So the first thing you can do if your baby sleep's taken a bit of a dive at around 8 months is cut out that 3rd late afternoon nap if your baby's still napping then. I mean, like I said, the development that's happening for your baby is really going to impact their sleep as well. So that can mean that they might wake up in the night and be awake for a little while they are literally practicing their new abilities. So you might notice your baby starts maybe crawling around their cot a lot more, sitting up in their cot, even standing. And there are products like sleep products that can help you with this. Baby sleeping bags can help with the crawling and standing factor. What is quite important during this time, because it is finite, so your baby will grow out of that. It's not like the 4-month sleep change, which kind of lasts forever. Whatever's going on for your baby's sleep at 8 months will only be happening for a short while, so there is an end in sight. But what a lot of people fall into the trap of is starting some new sleep habits with their child at that point because they're desperate to get them to go back to sleep. So parents might start rocking or patting or doing something to assist their baby to go back to sleep. And you know, you do what you've got to do in the situation, don't you? And a lot of people, especially first-time parents who might not kind of know what's a bit further down the track, might not realise that they're then setting up a habit with their baby, which is going to mean that poor sleep is is continued. So if your baby then develops a habit of being rocked to sleep, an older baby like that is really going to refuse to let go of that habit easily. So then you might be looking at a baby a couple months down the track who has developed some sort of sleep issues around needing to be rocked to sleep, and it's going to be quite hard to break those sleep associations. So if your baby has reached 8 months, cut out that third nap if they're still having it, ride through the developmental changes and try not to introduce too many new sleep associations, especially parent-controlled sleep associations at that point. If you do get stuck with any of that, we can definitely help you. Our sleep programs will make sure that the naps are all happening at the right times, and we can certainly help you gently and gradually break away from any of those parent-controlled sleep associations if you've found yourself in that situation.
If your baby's 8 months old and well established on solids, then the likelihood of your baby actually needing a feed at that time of the morning is pretty low. She's waking at the moment probably due to a habit wake, and the easier way to figure that out is if it's the same time every morning. The reason that she's resettling with a feed is because it's nice and comforting. She gets to see mum and she gets a nice milk feed, and then she goes back to sleep. There are other reasons why babies will wake at that time of the morning, especially around that age. The first thing that we'd need to look at is if she's still having 3 naps a day and the timing of that last nap. It would definitely be time to trim that nap right down, if not get rid of it altogether, and that will help consolidate the nighttime and the early morning wake. The early morning wake is actually one of the hardest parts for the babies to consolidate, especially around that age. So the daytime sleep is important to figure out. The other thing that we need to look at is the first nap of the day. If the first nap of the day is really long or too close to when she's waking, that will be encouraging her to wake up early morning. With her being small, the other thing that we need to look at is if you're small. If you're not a large person and if you're a really small, petite person, then the likelihood is that your baby is going to be petite as well. So that's not necessarily a reason for her actually needing to be waking for a feed.
The short answer is usually between 6 and 8 months that nap will disappear. Prior to this, your baby is ideally on 3 naps a day. So in our sleep programs it's structured so there's a shorter nap in the morning, a longer nap across the middle of the day, and then a shorter nap again in the late afternoon to get your baby through to a settled bedtime at around 7. So usually by 6 months we aim to have whittled down that late afternoon nap. So it's sort of slowly weaning your baby off needing that nap, I suppose, and keeping the other 2 naps in place. Now, you don't just need to drop the late afternoon nap simply because your baby has reached a particular age. So there are signs that you would be looking out for in terms of your baby's readiness to do away with that nap. And those signs would be that your baby has the nap, but then starts being really unsettled after that before bedtime and refuses to go to bed at their normal bedtime, whatever that is, maybe 7 o'clock in the evening. They might wake a couple hours into the night, they might wake around 3 a.m. or they might wake early in the morning. Start waking at those times if they were previously not waking at those times. So those are signs that their afternoon nap, late afternoon nap is interfering with their night sleep. And it might be that their late afternoon nap is too long, and the first step would be to maybe cut down that late afternoon nap in length and see if that positively affects their bedtime and their nights. If they're still having unsettled bedtimes and nights, then it might be time, especially if they're over 6 months, to do away with that afternoon nap altogether. Another sign that your baby is ready to drop the afternoon nap is that they simply stop having it. So they're just not tired enough to actually go to sleep for that nap. And you might be fighting them and fighting them and fighting them to go to sleep, and maybe they do fall asleep, but it's a bit too late in the afternoon and a bit too close to bedtime, and then it's gonna push out everything in the rest of your day, and bedtime's going to become a lot later. So if your baby's fighting the nap, then it's a really good sign that they actually are ready to drop that nap altogether. When you're looking at reducing or doing away with that late afternoon nap, it is still really important that your baby is having a decent midday sleep. Because if they're not having their second sleep of the day as their biggest sleep, then they're coming into bedtime quite overtired already. So if they're having a long morning nap, and then a shorter nap around lunchtime, and then a shorter nap in the late afternoon, and you do away with that late afternoon nap, they're going from when they wake up from their long morning nap, which is maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, they're going right through to bedtime in the evening with probably just a shorter cat nap to fill in that time. And that's going to mean that they're going to be reaching bedtime really overtired. So it's going to be harder for you to drop that late afternoon nap in a baby that's having their long morning nap in the morning. So what we aim to do is we have a shorter nap in the morning to get babies through to a long midday lunch nap. And then they're tired enough and they're ready to have a nice long sleep for a couple of hours across the middle of the day, which means that when they do drop that late afternoon nap, they're still well rested enough that they're not getting too overtired come bedtime. So that's a way easier nap transition for babies than those who are used to having a longer nap in the morning and then 2 shorter naps throughout the rest of the day. If your baby is over 8 months old, then you definitely need to have dropped the late afternoon nap. Because as I said, normally it would be dropping between 6 and 8 months. So we'd sort of say definitely by 8 months, unless your baby is sick or unless there's something else going on and they need to catch up on sleep or you've been on holiday. But after 8 months, any sleep after 3 p.m. is really going to wreak havoc with bedtimes, night times, and potentially early morning waking as well. So if your baby's over 8 months old and you say, should I drop the late afternoon nap? Then yes, definitely. In any of those cases, our sleep programs talk you through the perfect nap structure, the perfect nap lengths, and really ease you through getting rid of the late afternoon nap and all the other nap transitions to come. At 10 months old, babies aren't capable of having nightmares as we know them. Nightmares are something that is an imagination response, and so imagination doesn't develop in children until a lot later, probably over 2 years old. And until your child knows about fear or cognitively learns rational and irrational fear, they're not capable of imagining something to be afraid of. So your 10-month-old won't be going to sleep and having a nightmare about a monster coming and stealing them out of their room, or things that my 4-year-old son might have a nightmare about. Babies this age are not capable of that kind of mature thought process, especially an unconscious one when they're asleep. So what is most likely happening in a baby that age is if he's waking and screaming or calling out for you or crying or really unhappy or unsettled, there's something else going on, and I really don't think it's nightmares. So the first place you would start to look is what's happening in his daytime that's affecting him overnight. And it might be that he needs some changes made to his nap structure, because maybe he's waking overnight because he's really overtired and he's not quite getting the right amount of nap hours in the day, and he's waking and he's really tired, but because of the hormones that circulate through our bodies when we're overtired, he's unable to kind of switch off and go back to sleep. So he's just upset because he does want to go back to sleep, but he just doesn't know how to. He might also be waking at this age, maybe there's a settling situation that needs some addressing. So if he's being put to sleep at the start of the night by a parent actively settling him to sleep by sort of rocking or feeding, and then he's waking overnight and you're not there, he's, that at that age, that is going to cause a baby some distress, because they're old enough to be aware of what's going on, and they're aware of their surroundings, and they're aware of that you were there when they went to sleep, and they've naturally come out of a nighttime sleep cycle and you're not there, and you're not rocking them or feeding them, and they're alone and they're just uncertain, and they want you to come back, and give them that association that they need in order to go back to sleep. And in a younger baby, that kind of thing can definitely happen, but it might just be grizzling, maybe a bit of crying and unsettled behaviour. But in an older baby, it can certainly mean that your baby will escalate quite quickly to your baby screaming or seeming like they're in pain or like they've had a nightmare, because they just want to get you back there to put them back to sleep. And that's the only way they know how. So I would first look at what's happening in your baby's day, make sure their napping is all lined up to be really, really age appropriate, so that's not having an impact on their nighttime settling and sleep. And then I would also be looking at your baby's settling ability and the situation there. And if you need some help with either of those things, our sleep programs have got all the information you need.